You might be finding it easier to pull your phone and spend hours on the screen going through social media or browsing the internet. And you can easily do this without losing concentration or focus. But picking a book to read or to study in a few minutes you are completely bored. To do what you need to do at work, or what you need to do part-time, even worse. Half an hour of concentration you become bored. Exercising, eating healthy food and reading or learning a new skill which is a productive activity and will in the long run give you much more benefit seems like a boring chore, and by default you would rather scroll through timelines, play a video game, watch TV, eat junk food or even watch obscene videos online, and we always argue that doing this feels easy and requires almost no effort, but doing the things that can actually have a great reward in the long run feels like a hard activity and will require so much effort. But some other people seem to find it easy to read, eat healthy food, exercise and even study regularly without seemingly much effort. And this is where we ask, why is it much easier for them to do hard things or difficult things with so much ease? And is there a way that the rest of us can use to make the doing of difficult things easy? The answer to this question lies in a neurotransmitter known as dopamine. Dopamine is mostly considered by many as a pleasure molecule, but that's not really what it is all about. Dopamine is what is responsible for us wanting things, or rather desiring things. And because of this desire, we get motivated to do things or to go for something. An experiment was done on rats and electrodes were planted into their brains whereby if the rats pressed a lever, dopamine was released, therefore stimulating them by creating a very strong craving for more. Shockingly, the rats would press the lever repeatedly up to as high as 7,000 times in an hour to stimulate their brains. Anytime they touched the lever it gave them a reward of great pleasure. Even as the experiments went on, they revealed that rats preferred the stimulation to food even when they were starving, and even though they were thirsty they could still prefer the stimulation. Nothing seemed to be of importance, not even mating. All female rats taking care of their newborns abandoned them and went for the lever. At times to the extent they didn't care about food that they could even drop dead from starvation if not disconnected from the electrode circuit. Pressing that lever had become everything to them. But when the process was reversed and dopamine was not being triggered, they became so lazy that they couldn't move a few inches to go for food even though they were hungry. But when food was brought to their mouths they would eat it and enjoy the food. All they lacked was motivation to get up and go do the thing they needed to do. It is important to know that food or hunger is not the only motivation to get food. Dopamine plays such a big role in this. As much as this could seem extreme, the same can be seen in humans in our day-to-day lives, and priorities are formed in the brain based on how much dopamine is expected from that act. If the action releases less dopamine, then you won't have motivation enough to do it. But if the action is going to release more dopamine, you will be highly motivated to go and do it again and again and again. So, what are the examples of behaviors that release dopamine? Any activity that has an anticipation of immediate reward releases dopamine. On the other hand, if the rewards are not immediate, your brain will not release the dopamine, hence very little motivation. Like when you are about to eat some nice cheesy and meaty slice of pizza, your brain releases dopamine in anticipation that it is going to make you feel good. Even if it's going to pump so many calories into your body and make you feel bad about it. The brain does not care if the high dopamine activity is bringing you damage or not, it just keeps wanting more and more of it. Another good example could be that of a drug addict who knows very well that whatever he is doing is not good, but the level of dopamine released makes them not to care so much about the repercussion but about the reward they get from the drug there and then. Some of those drugs will even stimulate the release of more dopamine, which in turn make you crave for more and more of the drug. Everything releases some amount of dopamine. Even the drinking of water when you're thirsty also does release some level of dopamine. The highest release of dopamine, however, is released when you get a reward randomly. Just like when betting, you could be losing money while placing your bets, but when you lose you still know that you will get a bigger reward if you try again, even though you're unsure when you are going to win. Thinking about the reward of the jackpot releases bigger amounts of dopamine, which give you the motivation to go on and on. Each and every day from different sources we are flooding our brains with huge amounts of dopamine even without knowing it. Some of the sources are like going through social media websites such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and even YouTube. Playing games on your phone and also watching porn on the internet. We look forward to some reward from each of the actions we take. That's the reason why you keep checking your phone in anticipation of seeing a message or a notification from an app with something nice. Like our rats from the experiment, we keep pulling the lever on and on hoping to get that dopamine shot without thinking about it. So, what's wrong with that? You can ask yourself that question and even say that it's not harming me in any way. But stop. You would be so wrong about it. There is a biological system that our body has and it is known as homeostasis. This means that our bodies love keeping internal systems and chemical systems at a balance. Which is that if you got some imbalance somewhere in your system, it adapts to that and creates a new balance. For example, when you're rained on and become cold, your body automatically starts to shiver, and the reason for that is so that you develop heat from the shivering. And when it's the opposite, we sweat automatically to lose that heat from our body. That's because there is a temperature balance required for the body to maintain. It shouldn't go too high or too low. However, homeostasis manifests through tolerance as well. For example, someone who exercises a lot can withstand running for a long time or doing a vigorous activity more than one who doesn't, who would simply break down if put in a marathon track. Also, a frequent alcohol user rarely gets drunk on a few bottles, but one who seldomly drinks will be drunk very fast. This is because of tolerance to that activity or behavior. The body develops tolerance, therefore can take a lot more in. The same applies to dopamine. Your body, when used to taking small doses of dopamine, it gets used to that, but when it gets huge amounts of dopamine it becomes more tolerant to it, and those levels become your new normal. And this is where the problem lies. The other things which have less dopamine releases will not interest you anymore, making them extremely difficult to do them. They feel boring and not fun at all because the dopamine they release is not as much as the one your brain is used to, which comes from higher dopamine level behaviors. This is why you find someone preferring to browse through the internet than to read a book, go through social media and admire photos, or look for funny memes than to learn a new skill or study. A movie makes you feel good and comfortable and therefore releases high levels of dopamine, but then things like working hard, praying, reading, studying, building your startup business feel boring because of the lower amounts of dopamine they release. It's the same thing that affects drug addicts trying to quit and adjust to normal life, which is a very difficult thing to them. And this is because their dopamine levels are so high that being sober can't match up to that. They lack the motivation to do things. Same also for video game addicts, pornography addicts, masturbation addicts, junk food addicts, social media addicts. All of them experience the same thing. You see, once the dopamine levels are so high in their systems, they seem not to enjoy anything low dopamine producing. So what can one do to prevent this? The answer is yes, you need to perform a dopamine detox. For some of you, you already know what you need to do, but let's learn together. Pick one day in your week when you are going to avoid all high dopamine stimulants to let your dopamine receivers to start recovery. For those who are addicted to drugs, since you could suffer extreme withdrawal symptoms, I advise you go get professional medical help from the rehabilitation centers. And this is because it could have gotten to bad levels that you have already developed in your system through the drugs, both physiological and psychological interdependency. Well, back to the detox. Try to have as little fun as possible during this day. Completely stay away from a computer, telephone or internet. Don't listen to music, don't watch pornography or masturbate if that's where your addiction is. And also do not eat any junk food. In short, everything that gives you external pleasures will be off for the entire day. I know it's going to be boring, I can't lie to you. It's going to be so boring. On the other side, what you are allowed to do in this day is, go for a walk, or go for a jog. Spend time reading a book, take time to meditate and spend time being calm and relaxed. Do internal reflection.